We were holding at a Tashma on Kufmem Bays. That's 142. This Tashma is, I think, 5 lines from the bottom. Yeah, does that make sense? Okay. Do we think Hashem, we're able to learn Torah every day? We're supposed to have learning, we should have the base of Mikdash. Immediately, we're learning the Nishma, so the Gold Basra Yamin, Son of Sabbath Mitzian. And for Shlema, David Sarah. And Gedali gets Elias Ben Shagit's Torah. When's the yard site, Chaim? When's your mother's yard site? How long were they saying Kaddish? Remember?
It's Chavches Tevis, so we're saying till Chavches Cheshvan. 11 months because it was a leap year.
So you're almost coming up another 10 days.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. So 142A. What happened over here? We had a discussion about Mizakel Uber. If someone can give a gift to a fetus, right? We said basically that didn't work. That was a statement from Rav Huna. We had a problem from the Mishnah. Rav Nachman asked. The Mishnah says that you can. It says in Teilidishti Zachar, whatever. You can give. So the way out of that was Rav Huna says, I don't know who was the author of that. And we tried to say maybe it's this one, maybe it's that one. Anyway. We gave a different teretz. Taisvus gave a different teretz that maybe there's a difference between if it's his own son or if it's someone else. Rav Huna was talking about someone else, right? Another child, but his own son, that could work. Okay, the problem is, no, that teretz wasn't given by Taisvus. That was a teretz that we saw in the Gemara. Yeah, in the Mishnah, that's what we said. In the Mishnah, that was in the Mishnah. Yeah, we had different approaches to that. Whatever the case is, then we got into a discussion about what about if he says, Likish Taylor, that when she will give birth, not to acquire now, but for later. Said, oh, that's a big machlekes. Rav Huna holds that doesn't work either. Rav Huna is very strict about this. Rav Nachman says that would work. Rav Sheshis, on the other hand, he's the polar opposite of Rav Huna. He says that everything works. Mezakalu Uba works, and for sure, Likish Taylor. But even right now, even the fetus person can give a gift to the fetus. Okay. Toshima. So come and listen. This is going to be, I think, a kasha of Sheshis. Let's see. It says, Tinik ben Yemechad Neichel Manchel. A child, even if he's 1 day old, so he could inherit and bequeath. Now, the significance of this, to inherit and bequeath, is because if it's a father giving it to his son, or bequeathing to his son and the son to the grandchildren, then there's no difference if there was a child there. What we're talking about here is that, let's say, Yaakov has 2 wives, right? Rachel and Leah. Rachel is very wealthy, and she has a son, Yosef. And Leah has children, Reuven, Shimon. Well, Rachel passes away, and Yosef is 1 day old. And on that day that Rachel passed away, Yosef passed away a day later. Reuven and Shimon are going to inherit the inheritance via. It has nothing to do with them. This is all Rachel's family, right? But because Yosef is the son, so he'll inherit, and then from Yosef it goes over to Reuven and Shimon. So it's passing over. So now this would only work if Yosef was a day old. So the Gemara says like this: Ben Yaim Echad in. If Yosef is a day old, then good. But if he wasn't born yet, then lie, and it's not going to work. So even though they had a brother in gestation, but they won't be able to inherit from that brother unless he was born. So Reuven and Shimon won't end up with any of that money. If it's an Uber, it's a kashan Rav Sheshes.
Isn't there an idea that the baby has left? The baby has to be like for 30 days for it to be considered alive.
I don't think we say that. I think we would say that only if it's born in the 8th month.
Okay. But we don't have a burial, right?
Sorry?
We don't do like a same kind of burial or maybe.
Right. We don't do the same type of burial, but that concept that maybe it's not viable and the baby's actually mukta, those things on Shabbos, I think all of that is with the 8th month.
Okay.
The baby that's born in the 8th month, and we say that regular baby that's born, you don't do the pidyon ben, so there is that aspect. But nevertheless, we'll consider him able to inherit one day. We'll have to figure out why we make that distinction.
I think we do the burial, but we don't have the tombstone and the other ceremonies.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. Really wanted to judge me? Yeah, tribe of Levi, 30 days. Okay, so we have
We're gonna have something that's going to come up about the 8th month, aren't we?
I don't know. You probably know better than me.
Because the 8th month is that funny month that they hold that's the 7th. The preemies on 7 and 9 are okay, but not an 8.
Right.
Yeah.
So Rav Sheshes has to answer this because we just said that an Uber cannot inherit and bequeath. Amar Rav Sheshes, so Rav Sheshes explained this over there, that Noichel b'nichseim lahanchel lachem anav, v'dafka ben yemechad avalu b'loi. My time, and the explanation for this is that Tehu misperesha ve'ina ben yershasime b'kevel lahanchel lachem anav. It's a totally different logic over there. What happened over there was that there was a story, Shalom would bring this up, that there's a story, I guess in Bab Mitzvah also where he likes it, but we're going to have it later, about the same sort of scenario where there's a woman that's dying, and because a house collapsed, I think, and there's a son. The question is, who died first? And if the son died first, then the brothers from the same father will not inherit the mother's possessions. If the mother dies first, and then the son dies, so the son in those moments before he died, he inherits from the mother, and then when he dies, it gets passed over to the other family, to the father's family, to the brothers. So that would happen only if he was alive. But let's say he was inside his mother, he was in gestation, and the house collapsed. Now, who dies first in such a thing? Does the fetus die first, or does the host, does the mother die first? The hostess. So it says that the fetus dies first. Oh, so what Rav Sheshes answers this, he says that story of Ben Yemechad that the Tinik Ben Yemechad is Neichel and Manchel, that's talking about, but not a fetus, because when that happens, the fetus dies first. That's why it doesn't have to do. If it would be another story or an actual case, if the fetus would be alive, then yeah, it would be, but it's not. It doesn't happen, right?
Do they know that the fetus dies first?
Oh, so one second. We're on top of 142b. It says Lememra Dehume Spiresha. You want to tell me that the fetus always dies first? We had such a story, and the fetus was still fluttering after the mother died. That's similar to a lizard's tail that still hops around even if it's cut off. Doesn't mean that it's alive.
Wow.
Hmm.
In this case, like the baby was like it wasn't alive.
Yeah, it was moving, it was fluttering, but it wasn't alive. Yeah.
Do you know why? Because logic would say like the mother would pass first.
No, I think what the Gemara's logic is that the baby is the fetus is more sensitive. So once as the mother's passing away, parts of the body start to give. They say the fetus would give first before the mother. That's what I think the Gemara's logic. Yeah. But they have stories for this accidents, and they say they saved the baby, and right.
Yeah, the mother passed away, but the baby survived. How about from an animal like a cow? They checked it and they find the baby is still alive.
Yeah, it's a good point. Ben Pakua. There's Dr. Stein. That's a good point. So that's an obvious question. That's a problem, right? So Tosfos mentions over here. Shows he makes it tchila. By the shchita, it's different. And then just 1 second. It says we have another case. The mother died and then it gave birth. That was if it dies the hands of man. But I thought we were talking about the house that collapsed. It should be the same thing, right? Question Tosfos asks is that if once you started to tell me that there's a lot of exceptions to this rule, that sometimes the Uber dies later. So why do you tell me they have to be a day old? It's not true. You have all of these examples where it's not a day old, where an Uber would actually inherit. So, Jesus says that because it doesn't always happen. That's not what they said. That's it. Yeah, it's less consistent. Yeah, Hillel, what did you want to add?
I have to let back and
Okay, Marberei de Rav Yosef from Shmei de Rava Amar. Rav Yosef's son says the name of Rava. Laimar is coming to tell us this is very interesting. He's switching this around. You see, we were saying that an Uber wouldn't inherit and bequeath. A fetus wouldn't inherit and bequeath. However, 1 day old would inherit him. Now comes along Rava and says that's not so. That's not exactly what's happening. What's happening is that really an Uber does inherit and bequeath. He does. The problem the Rashbam brings up is that Rava said before, he argued on Abaya. Abaya said Yerusha Ba Meila, Uber would inherit even though he can't receive a gift, but he could inherit because that comes on its own. That's an automatic thing. And that's what Abaya said. And Rava argued on that. He says that he doesn't even inherit. And so why did it not work before? That was because when they acquired it from the Nechse Ager and they found out that he had a son and they had to acquire it again, that's because the first time they acquired it, it wasn't. They weren't guaranteed. It wasn't a strong. They weren't strong on their acquisition because they thought maybe there's going to be a son, so that's why they didn't. That's why they need to acquire the second time. So, which means that Rava holds that an ubar does not really acquire. Now we're saying an ubar doesn't inherit. Rashbam says, well, the Gemara does this. It goes this way and it goes that way. You can, depending on what we're trying to answer. Okay. However, so what happens here in this Mishnah of Tinuk ben Yemechad Neichel Amanchel? So it goes like this. Okay. You got to listen to this. Let's say Yaakov has a son. This is I'm telling you from the Rashbam. Let's say Yaakov has two sons, Reuven and Shimon. He has 12 coins. Reuven is the oldest. So Reuven's going to get 8, and Shimon's going to get 4. You divide it into 3. Give Reuven 2 parts, and you give Shimon 1 part. All right? It's the firstborn portion and the regular portion. Double and let's say Yaakov has 3 sons, Reuven, Shimon, Levi. So then what you would do is you would divide. Reuven would get 6, and Shimon and Levi would get 3 and 3. That's taking care of the 12. Let's say let's say Levi passed away. So now they take his portion and they divide it in half. So Reuven now has 7.5, right? Because he had 6, and he has 5.5, right? 4.5. 4.5. Yes, 4.5.
Happens if you distribute his portion after we go back to the state.
Okay, 1 second. 1 second. Now, let's say Yaakov has 2 sons, Reuven and Shimon, but Levi is in gestation. Okay. And then he's born after Yaakov dies. So there's only 2 sons at the time of death. So regarding the firstborn, he gets the second part of the firstborn portion, which is 4. That he gets right away. How much is left? There's 8 left. Now Levi is born. I have to take the 8 that's left and divide it into 3.
We don't count the
2.6, right? 2.6, something like that. So each one is going to get 2.6. So he's going to get 4 plus 2.6. So which means now we're saying that only a Tinuk ben Yemechad adjusts the Chelek B'chayra, would affect the firstborn portion. That's what Rav is saying. But not if he's in gestation. That won't affect the firstborn portion.
Oh, we don't count an Uber.
Not regarding
the father dies and then
the son is going to inherit, just like one of the brothers. The fetus.
Oh,
Fetus is
okay.
going to inherit. After he's born, he's going to inherit. That's
Okay.
according to everyone, he's going to inherit. But he doesn't affect the distribution of the firstborn portion. That's going to be distributed without his, as if he's not there. Does it Uber? Yeah, they have to wait. They have to wait for him to be born. Yeah, that's what they. Then there's Yibam. Yeah.
Unless he comes into the
Yeah.
he's not counted.
I don't remember. Once he's born, then there's no Yibam automatically, right? Even if he dies, there's no Yibam. Let's say he dies within the month. I think that would be a difference between the 8th month and not. Yeah. Okay.
What if it's a girl?
There's no Yibam either.
Well, inheritance. Let's say
Oh, the girl would inherit if there's only
one.
one girl.
She doesn't get firstborn and stuff.
No. If
So-
there's only a girl, no other sons.
So they can't do this calculation until they figure out whether the fetus is a boy or a girl.
Right.
If it's an androgynous or
Yeah, that was the last mission.
Right.
They make mistakes in the what's it called, the way they can tell if it's a boy or a girl. Use a technique, sonograms and stuff. Is it a sonogram? Yeah, it's not. They don't always get it right. A lot of times the baby's born and the parent says, "What? What? I thought I was having a boy." But okay.
Somebody in my shul, by the way, is a urologist who specializes in reproduction. And he told me that I was discussing with him Timtum and what you know and what you don't know. He says, oh, it's a real medical issue, but today you find out immediately because you do a blood test. You find out immediately whether a child is a boy or a girl, you do a blood test. But he said, Timtum was discussed in the Gemara. It's a dangerous situation. It has to be corrected immediately.
I don't know if I ever told you this story, but and there was a certain a Bestin somewhere where there was a girl that was converting, and she brings in with the person that she wants to marry a Chassidish guy with payas. And wasn't in my business. I heard this from one of the different rabbis. And they thought that was a little odd because usually the Hasidim are like very careful with yichus and this. Something was strange. Anyway, they looked into it a little bit. They asked a few questions. It turned out that this boy was born as androgynous in Eretz Yisrael. And they recommended that he be raised as a boy. Yeah, they recommended that he be raised. The psychologist or whatever recommended he be raised as a boy. No, they recommended that he be raised as a girl. Right? They recommended that he be raised as a girl. Then afterwards, somehow I think they said that he's going to be a boy because you can go either way. Raised as a girl, and anyway, so she went to Beis Yaakov. Anyway, later on, they said no. When it comes to marriage, the way it works is that if you can marry, if there's a suffix, so if if a man marries another man, that's a Torah prohibition. So if there would be, if he was a girl, if there continues to be a girl, then he's going to marry a man, and then that's a Torah prohibition. That's not allowed. But a woman and a woman won't be a problem. So they tell him to be a man, and then he'll marry a woman, and that way, even if he's a woman, that would be okay. Anyway, so he's going to marry. So they said that's the only case. That was the only case that it came up like such a thing. Anyway, I said, wow, this fellow went to Beis Yaakov, and probably the only guy that knows Ramban al Torah.
But it's not considered a marriage.
Right. It's not a marriage, but because there's a doubt, so we could say that maybe it's, and even if it's not, right, because of the doubt, even if it's not, it's nishkaperla. No, the Rambam holds that's the Torah. One of the Rishonim holds that K'maisi Eretz Mitzrayim, that a woman and a woman is another Torah prohibition. It's not the same thing, but it's a prohibition of not to behave like the Egyptians.
Well, we have this opinion of Shimon ben Gamliel that a tumtum is a third mean.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is very interesting.
Right.
So what's
the end of the story?
Yeah.
That's I think they live happily ever after. Yeah, like in the movies. Okay.
Was it boy in the end?
Yeah. Anyway, here we're saying like this, that Mar Breder Rav Yosef Shmei the Rava says Shemamayit b'chelik b'chayre b'dafke ben yemechad, so that the fetus, the child needs to be 1 day old in order to affect the firstborn portion. And that's only a day old. Avaluberlai. My time, what's the reason Beyoldalai? It says in the pasuk about getting the firstborn, it says that he was born. Amarachmana. The Abraham says. Wasn't born, that it doesn't affect the firstborn. Amar Mar Breder Rav Yosef Shmei de Rava. Because Mar Breder Rav Yosef says the name of Rava, one that was talking here, he says, Ben Shanel Lachem Yisasav, Venamayt Bechela Pechera. My time, what's the reason that this child that's born after the father dies, it means he was in gestation during until the father died, then the firstborn son still gets it gets as if he doesn't exist. My time of the Yodalam Rachman of Allah, only if he's born would that affect it, but he wasn't born yet. So Surah Masnahachi. In Surah, this is the way this Gemara was taught. In Pumpadisa, they taught the same thing, just with another pasuk. Pumpadisa, they taught a little different. They taught it like this. Amar Mar Breder Rav Yosef Shmei de Rava. Mar Breder Rav Yosef said in the name of Rav B'char Shnei L'Dachem Yisas Aviv, that if a firstborn was born after the father died. Now, how do you have a firstborn that's born after the father died? Firstborn means that you don't have that there's other children. You can't just have one child. But if the father dies so there's two options. One option is that there were twins, and there's one that came out first. The father's not around, right? Other option is there's more than one wife, right? Because if the father's dead, then the mother can't become pregnant again. So it must have been another wife that gave birth a few months later, or whatever. And so you have a firstborn, and then you have another one. So if he's born after the death of his father, then that firstborn doesn't get a portion either. Not just not just that a later birth doesn't affect the firstborn, but the firstborn himself doesn't get. My time, what's the reason? Yakir Amarachman of less of the Yakir, because the father has to recognize he's the firstborn and he's not around. The halacha is like all of these statements.
In these cases that inheritance has already been distributed and there's a new son,
Right.
Will the brothers give?
Yeah, they have
to
to
then go back to the state and redistribute this.
It probably does go back to the state and redistribute. Yeah, it wasn't distributed properly. Yeah. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Amar Rabbi Yechanan. Yitzchak says name of Rabbi Yechanan. Yeah, we're now in Eretz Yisrael. Last Gemara was in Bavel. Amazaka le'ubar leikana. Someone tries to give a gift to an uber, he doesn't acquire. What about our Mishnah? Mishnah says someone that wants to give his son that's going to be born, or his daughter that's going to be born. As well, the Mishnah is different. This is a good teretz. This is the teretz. Why don't we answer this for Ravuna? That was a question that we mentioned from places, right? Yeah, that was the teretz we gave for Rav Nachman. Rabbi Yechanan, come on, this is a good teretz. Okay, there's a difference between if he's giving it to his son, or if he's giving it to a fetus that's not his son. So the statement in the Mishnah was when he was giving it to his son, which works. And the statement from Rav Huna, or those other statements, or even from Rabbi Yechanan, is when it's not, he's giving it to someone that's not his son. Amalei Shmuel or Rav Chana Bagdasa. Shmuel says to Rav Chana Bagdasa from Baghdad. Gather for me 10 people. I want to make a statement. I want 10 people to hear it. Statement is someone that gives something to an Uber acquires it. However, the hilchasa, but the halacha is he doesn't acquire. Now we say that this is when it's not his son. But if it is his son, then we would say that he does acquire, like Rabbi Yechanan said.
He give it as a gift.
Yeah. They were talking about as a gift. Inheritance would go anyway. Who the Amarlu the Bisu? Someone told his wife, Nechasai libni the habili minach. I'm going to give my inheritance to the children that I have from you. must be a second wife. And he's telling her that don't worry, your children are going to get the inheritance. Well, that can upset some people. Asa break Shisha, his older son comes in from a first marriage, and doesn't say maybe it's a second wife or maybe a first wife, a first marriage. He comes up and he says, "Amalei, Gavra, Tavila, what's going to be with me? What's going to be with so and so?" Is his expression, which means me. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a bachar. He's just saying, "What's going to be with me?" Because he said that so Amalei Zilknik Echad Mibra, you'll take like one of those sons. You'll get along with the other. You'll take together with him. Okay, so now he's included in the inheritance. Hanach vaday leikano. Now we're talking about that new wife didn't have any children yet. He was just promising her, and that's what they do. They promise them a lot. So he was just promising her that what's going to happen, but she didn't have children. Now, even if you say mezaka uber is kana, which that's the way we're going, but it's not if she's not pregnant. She has to be pregnant. There was no pregnancy yet, so they don't get anything from that statement. The question is, hi, but what about this fellow? Yes, chaylek letalia b'makam banya, eles chaylek letalia b'makam banya. Is there a portion for this youth, Talia's youth, where there are those sons, or I think b'makam banya? I think what it really means is where those sons don't acquire. In other words, when you make a statement and you include in it some things that are clearly not effective, does that also mean that the rest of the statement is not effective? He said that you should acquire together with them. Does that mean that he's acquiring and they're not? They're for sure not acquiring. Or it doesn't mean that no one's acquiring. Well, Rav Avin, Rav Maisha, Rav Yirmiyah, the Amri, that he does get a portion. Rav Avo, Rav Chanina, Bar Papi, Rav Yitzchak Nafcha Damri, les chelik l'tali makamani. He doesn't get a portion. So there's a machlekes amongst these Amoraim in Eretz Yisrael, Rav Yirmiyah versus Rav Avo. Amalei Rav Avo or Rav Yirmiyah. Rav Avo says to Rav Yirmiyah, Hilchas a kavasana, Hilchas a kavasaychu. Is halacha like us that this fellow doesn't get a portion because he was included together with all the ineffective statements, or is the halacha like you that he does get a portion? Amalei, so Rabbi Yirmiyah says, "Shita de hilchas kavasan." For sure, the halacha is like us. The kashishna minaycha, because we're older than you. V'lav hilchas kavasaychu the dardakiatan. You guys just showed up in yeshiva. Yeah, we were here 2 years. You were only here 1 year. There's some yeshivas that I like that. First year guy, second year guy. Second year guy, you call the shots. In the universities, it's probably like that. The seniors, they run the show. The freshmen, they play all the tricks on them. So Amalei says, "Midi because she said Talia Milsa." Does it have to do with age? The time of Talia Milsa, it has to do with logic. It doesn't have to do with age. The time of Mai, and what's the reason? Zilla Gabi de Rabbi Oven, the Asbartan Ale. You go ask Rabbi Oven. I explained it to him. Now it's interesting that Rabbi Oven was one of the people that said that he does get a portion. And Rabbi Avo was saying, I already explained it to one of your friends, Rabbi Yirmiyah, and he actually agreed to me. He nodded in approval in the Beis Medrash. So I already have his agreement. So Azalagabe, Rabbi Yirmiyah goes to Rabbi Oven, Amalei. Rabbi Oven explained, Ilu Amalei Knika Chamar Mikani. Let's say he would tell this older son, he says, go acquire like a donkey. A donkey doesn't have any ownership of anything. So would he acquire it? So therefore, when he tells him you'll acquire like your brothers that weren't born yet, weren't even conceived yet. So that's nothing. So basically what you said was nothing. Itmar, because we have a statement like this, Knika Chamar. He says acquire like a donkey. It says like Kana, you don't acquire. Let's say At v'Chamar. Let's say it was said a little different. Let's say it said it's going to go to you and to a donkey, not like a donkey, but he included a donkey as one of the recipients. Rav Nachman Amar, I think people have done this. They leave their inheritance to their dog or something. There's crazy stories like that, no?
It's almost the dog will find a good caretaker.
That's right. All of a sudden. Rav Nachman Amar kana mechzer. Rav Nachman says, well, if you said you and a donkey, so the donkey doesn't acquire, but at least you'll acquire, so you'll get half. The donkey's portion you don't get. Rav Hamnuna Amar Lay Amar Klum. Rav Hamnuna says you don't get anything. If you list it like that, what you mean to say is nothing, because not the donkey and not you, right? No one's getting. Rav Sheshes Amar Kanakol. Rav Sheshes says no. The donkey's not taking his portion. Okay, so the other guy takes it, so he gets the whole thing. It's exactly the opposite. So the polar opposites over here is Rav Hamnuna and Rav Sheshes. Rav Hamnuna says he gets nothing. Rav Sheshes says he gets everything. Rav Nachman was in the middle, gets half. Rav Sheshes says, I'll prove it to you that he gets everything. You know, Aminallah. How do you know this? Tanya was taught in a Brayso. Rabbi Yossi Yomer. Rabbi Yossi says, in kishas are like squash or cucumbers, right? How do they translate there? Cucumbers?
Yeah, cucumber.
What is it?
A shoot is a cucumber.
Cucumber. So the cucumbers could be bitter, and that would be when they get older, the inner part of the cucumber is bitter. Therefore, what do you have? You have something else? A chap with a P? Chap melon?
Shape melon.
Shape melon?
It's cucumber.
Okay. Yeah, we have to get that, but we'll only eat the outside. The inside is but to see by each Masechta, we should have all the fruits, the quinces and all the fenugreeks.
Right down to the Berkeley.
So what you have to do is, let's say you have 50 cucumbers here. You're going to take one of them, because it's truma is 1 out of 50, trei mimeh, 2 out of 100. So what you're going to do is, if you take one, that one that you took maybe is bitter on the inside. It's not really getting a full truma on all those 50. So you should take a little bit more from another one, from the outside of another one, to be able to get a full, because the inside shouldn't mess up this. So, why is this working? Atvechamarhu. Well, you're taking the inside together with the outside. If the inside doesn't work and the outside works, but when you're saying that this is all truma, so you're saying that you and the donkey should acquire. Now, according to Rav Hamnuna, that's nothing, because once one thing doesn't work, then nothing works. So Rav Sheshes says, see, even though the inside doesn't work, but the outside does work. So that's going to be effective. So Shani Hassan, the Gemara says that's not a proof. Oh, you got a melon over there. Oh, it looks like the what's it called? The Calabasas.
Calabasas.
Is there a melon called Calabasas?
Yeah.
And is it the man holding it?
Actually, I carry one in my backpack.
Once extinct, ancient hairy melon grows in Virginia, Washington Jewish Week. You got to see this.
Field trip. Believe that Yonah was Maryland.
Very nice beard.
Wow.
What's this? How do you grow it? Do you find old seeds? How do you do that?
Field trip.
We've had this. I've had this.
It looks like a mixed like cucumber.
Well, in California. Probably by the Roche.
I had this. My wife, someone she met, said, "Oh, you buy this and make it into a soup." We tried it. It was actually good. That was the last time. Couldn't have been that good. Okay. So why does it work? So the Gemara says, "Shani Hasan the Chum Mal Isi Dam Rabbi Loi Menayin L'Torah Mineral Yafshet Shemasi Chumash Number B'Tisol Chet Barim Chemeskel B'Mimenu." It says basically that even if you take truma and it's not the best quality, you take truma and something else that's a higher quality, it still works midei raisa. How do we know this? It says that you should not have a sin, you should not bear a sin when you're taking the truma. So if it doesn't work, if it doesn't work, then you have to do it again. What type of sin is that? It must be it must be that it works. It is considered truma, but you took the wrong one and it's still working. So that could be the sin. Okay, so that would be we just got rid of Rav Shesh's proof. Rav Sheshes was saying when it doesn't work entirely, and now it's one thing doesn't work entirely, and it's together with something else. That if you say nothing works, then how does the good part work, right? So we said, well, by the way, even the bad part also works. It's different. Amalei Rav Mordechai Rav Ashi. Maser Rav Avya Tiyupta. The Rav Avya asked the kasha. Maybe it means brought a proof. Maser Rav Avya Tiyupta. Yes, no, massive is a question. He raised a question, right? Ma'aseh b'chamish nashim behem shtei achayos. The story with 5 women, 2 of them are sisters, and others are just friends, tag-alongs. There was a person took a basket of te'inim or figs, right? Took a basket of figs that happened to belong to these women, but it doesn't really belong to them because it's shvius, because it was the Shemitah year, so it's considered hefker. So he went into their property, took their fruits, but because it was Shemitah, it's going to be acceptable. Gemara, where this is coming from, in Kedushin, learns a lot of different halachas from this. That you can use the Shemitah fruit, and you can take from someone else, and you can be mekadesh a woman. Va'amar, he says, all of you should be married to me with this basket. He gives them their own dates, their own figs. And one of them took it for all of them, acquired on behalf of all of them. Well, Amar Chachamim, said, the sisters in this are not married because you can't marry your wife's sister. So that's not going to work. And there's a machlekes by in Rava about kedushin loy nimsur labia, is even the kedushin that can't be consummated, betrothal that can't be consummated, is considered a kedushin. So where this Gemara, according to the Rashbam, is following that view. In a chayis mekadosh, it's okay.
There's only one that he can marry.
But because he doesn't know which one would be the main one, which would be the ones, therefore he can't marry any of them, right? So achayos hudei mekadoshos, the sisters aren't married. Hanachriyos, but the strangers, which means the other ones that aren't the sisters, mekadoshos, are married. Amay atrech amaru. But you said, if you start itemizing things, you list, you and a donkey should acquire. According to one opinion, we said that it doesn't work because if one doesn't work, the other one doesn't work. Yeah, how does the marriage work to those sisters? Amalei said to him, oh, this is why I had a dream of Rav Huna bar Avya in a dream. The mice of Rav Avya Tiyufta, because Rav Avya had this question. But Lav Miyukimna, didn't we not establish them? He said, he added in, he said, those of you that are eligible for marriage should be married to me. And that's why it works. It's not a kasha. But there, for sure, it's going to work. Because he wasn't marrying anyone that wasn't eligible. He said, you and a donkey and whoever is able to acquire, so then that's going to work. If he said you and a donkey should acquire, that's going to be different. That will still be the machlekes. Okay, let's leave it over here. Just starting. Okay, have a good Shabbos, everyone.
Shabbos.
Thank you. Good Shabbos.